I'm Sean Wallis. Welcome back to my studio. Today we're going to be taking our Teton painting from the drawing stage through the blocked in stage. And we call it blocking in because we block in our basic shapes, values, and colors, which creates a roadmap for the rest of our painting. It's at this point that you can make any changes that you want to make compositionally to improve your painting or to deviate from the picture or landscape that you are looking at. Have a look at my palette here. This is the palette that I use for every painting, unless I'm doing a small study and I limit my palette to push myself or to create color studies or color combinations that I have yet to explore. Other than that, when I'm just painting, this is the palette that I always use. I'll go through the colors here quickly. Ultramarine blue, teal, royal blue, king's blue, titanium white, bubblegum pink, magenta, rose madder, alizarin crimson, bright red, Mars red, Japanese orange, which replaces a cadmium orange because I don't really like how toxic cadmium is, transparent orange, Indian yellow, yellow medium, lemon yellow, yellow ochre, transparent brown, viridian, emerald green, and green light. Those are the colors that I use no matter what I'm painting. I always put all the colors out, like I said, unless I'm doing a color study. Sometimes I will begin a painting just from either the top down or from the farthest point forward. But to make things a little easier on you if you're a beginner, I'm actually going to start with my darkest value. And I'm going to move in a value progression, meaning I'll start with my darkest areas and then progressively go lighter and lighter and lighter until I'm painting my lightest areas, which are going to be the clouds in here. And the reason why I want to do it that way for you is because sometimes when you're beginning, it is kind of difficult to match your values. But if you go in with a simple progression, then you just know the next value has to be slightly lighter than the value before it. And it makes it a little easier on you. So using resin oil as my medium, I am mixing ultramarine blue with my alizarin crimson and just a touch of Indian yellow. And that gives me a really deep black. And that black can live down in these areas in the foreground. Now the reason why the black is going to live in these areas is because the natural progression of dark values comes with your darkest value the closest it can be to you. So what happens in nature is our atmosphere has moisture molecules in it. And those moisture molecules will diffuse light. And so as they diffuse the light, you lose these rich darks the farther away you get. So if you look at our picture, the darks on the mountain here are nowhere near as dark as the trees down here. Even if you look back into our picture over in this region, you see pine trees, yet they're much lighter than the pine trees you see here. That is nothing more than the light being diffused by moisture in the atmosphere. So we want our darkest values to live up front. And what that's going to do for us is bring this object forward. And that's important to create depth in your painting. So getting just a hair lighter, I'm going to add a little bit of viridian to this pile. And these aren't much lighter, but I'm going to start to record the shapes, the dark shapes on these little pine trees here. And then I'm also just going to quickly bring some of that dark down into the water reflecting. Well, I've already got it mixed, I might as well. Adding a little yellow light. I can lighten it just a hair. And bring up some more of that dark, but it's a little bit lighter where it's at the top of those trees, not at the bottom. So now squinting at my canvas, or at my picture, I can make a decision on where my next dark is. Now the reason why I squint at it is because color leaves when the light leaves. So if you squint down, only the light versus dark relationship will appear to you. And when you open your eyes back up, you realize where the next value is, but you also realize what happens to the color. It's no longer a green. So using ultramarine and King's blue with a little bit of Mars red, I get this grayed down color here. It is just slightly lighter. And that is the base of these pine trees. So I'm using this upward motion with my brush to give them that pine tree look. And then as they go back, they're even more blue. So just adjusting my mixture to add more blue and less of the Mars red. It gets a little bit lighter and a little bit more blue. And we can start to put in these little blocks of pine tree growth coming up this hill. And then up on here, the dark spots are going to be a little more fleeting because that's where the light is hitting. Don't be afraid to bring some of that color down amid those trees there too. So as I'm squinting at it, even the light parts of this hill are still fairly dark. So I'm adding a little bit of my light green and my emerald green and a little bit of my royal blue and bubblegum pink. You see why I put them all out, because I really do touch on all of them throughout a painting. But still in the family of darks in this painting, it's just a little bit lighter. And I can come in and fill in some of these areas. Worrying more about value at this point in the painting than I am about color. And you notice I don't have to really grab a different brush, and this is the first time that I'm cleaning my brush out. Simply because I've been mixing into the same pile of paint the entire time. But now I need to get just a little bit lighter, so I'm probably going to mix a pile that is adjacent to this one. You can see the colors I'm pulling in. Adjacent to it, pulling in some of this color because I don't want it to differ that much, but where the sun's kind of touching the top of this hill. it gets quite a bit lighter. And then also there's kind of a neat, sorry if I'm shaking that camera, I mix aggressively sometimes. But there's kind of a neat little color at the tops of these pine trees. A little more rust than that. So I want to record that color here in the block-in state so it doesn't get lost as I finish the painting. Now that I've got that in there, I can return to this and add some of the brighter colors that you're going to get in a foreground group of bushes. So taking some of my transparent brown and my viridian, I can come in with a stronger color here and start to get the side of this pine tree that the sun's going to be touching. Still fairly dark since it's all the way into the foreground. Then adding a little more transparent brown and maybe some ultramarine blue and viridian, I can come up with a middle tone. And where this part of the painting, I'm making it up purely out of my head as I go along. I can decide what all those tones are, and I can even decide to bring in a little bit of different color into the area. And most of this is going to be in shadow cast by whatever's around it, so I'm letting it stay kind of dark. But I can clean my brush out or grab a new brush, whatever you like to do. But I can clean my brush out and get a little more brilliant tone in here, mixing my orange, my bright red, and a little bit of my bright green just to dull it down, because I don't want it to be flowers. I want it to be some of those cool bushes you're going to find up in the mountains that just carry a hint of color. Alright, so squinting again at my scene, what I'm finding is that the next darkest tone is the blue-green that lives in this water here. Now, I'm not spending a lot of time on edges. This isn't the time for that. The time for that's going to come when we're finishing the painting. This is the time for basic shapes and basic values. And I'm seeing a little bit of a color change right at the peak where those rocks are. I'm guessing that that probably has something to do with there being earth right here. But I'm seeing that change in the water. And then I'm seeing it get just a little bit more blue right before it gets to that. A little bit darker as well. And then after it, that same kind of blue color and value. Then there's just one lone light blue line here. And the rest of that lake is going to be a very light value. Now I'm looking at the sun on these trees here, and it's really bright. And because of that, it's making me want to change a little bit of this to give it a little more sunlight. So I'm just going to put hints of it here and there, just at this stage, to record that I wanted that to be lighter. Alright, so that's it for the very, very dark portions of this painting. So I'm probably going to retire the brush that I have and grab a different one that's cleaner and one that can start to work some of these lighter tones. So I'm still moving in that progression of dark to light. And so squinting at it, I have a decision to make. Which is darker, this area or this area? And I'm squinting and I believe this area is darker. So I need to mix a color that is going to reflect its value. So right up here in this corner I'm seeing kind of a darker. It needs to be a little warmer than that though. So Indian yellow is always a good color to warm. And so is your transparent brown. It's better. So you can see some of that color getting dragged down. And now I need to mix the lighter version. But right now I'm looking at this region up here and the blues that exist up there. And it's a gray blue, so I'm going to mix my royal blue with a little bit of my transparent brown, and it gives it this kind of misty gray quality. And you can see already how that sets it back into the landscape. Now I'm squinting, and the things that I'm seeing that are darkest are going to be the sides of these cliffs here. And they're even a little darker than the trees I just painted down here. So I'm going to mix a color that belongs in the distance of the painting, but is still dark enough that it will give a definite shadow side. This probably could be a little more blue. Now remember, value is more important than color right now. Value and placement. So I'm drawing at this point too. Now the time that I took in the drawing is really paying dividends now. I'm just still refining those shapes just a little bit. And then we get quite a bit lighter from there. We move back to here. Now this shape needs to be refined just a little bit. Might be too bluish pink. So I'm going to add a little bit of that transparent brown to kind of fix that. Now I'm not going to bother painting in the snow caps just yet. Right now it's about simplifying. I don't really want to get too much detail at this point at all. Okay. Then we get a little lighter and a little browner for that loose gravel looking stuff that lives right in here. Then we can start to mix the highlights of those mountains, which I'm still going to work in this pile, but I'm just going to change the tone to a warmer tone and then lightly add white to brighten it a bit. Then we get quite a bit brighter and more vibrant as we come up to these cliffs. You can see I'm adding a few brighter colors in. This peak looks like it's got to be moved over a little bit. So that's what this part of the painting is for, is fixing and refining anything that needs to be fixed or refined. So that peak can actually come down that way. Okay, so I've changed those peaks up quite a bit. So now I need to come back in with some of that color and define the darks again. And then some of that background color and fill in the blanks. Okay, I'm a little happier with that. And now I'm ready to come back to this area with this vibrant green. And start to bring in some of that. And then this one on the bottom here is more of a yellow. Now I can move on to this last little bit in the water. Mixing blue with a little bit of the green in it and a little bit of white, because it's a very bright little line through here. You can see I'm still using a fairly large brush even to get these fine lines. The reason why I'm able to do that is simply because it's a flat and I can just turn it on its edge. Now I'm ready to do the sky, really. So I'm getting a little bit of teal, a little bit of white. And skies always get a little bit lighter down towards the horizon than they do up above. So as you come up, you want to progressively darken the value of your sky. So as I come up, I'm adding a little more of my blues and less of my whites. You can see that difference there. At least hopefully you can on the video. But then I can just come in and blend. And again, every so often, just adding a little more blue to that pile. And then for my absolute lightest value are going to be the clouds in the sky. which your sky is usually always your lightest value unless you're painting a very overcast and stormy day. Anything other than that, your sky will contain the brightest values of your painting. So I'm going to thin the white down quite a bit so it will travel. And I'm just going to rough in my cloud very quickly. Alright, so there it is, blocked in. Thanks for joining me for this video. Blocking in is one of my favorite stages because you get to make decisions all along the way of how you want your painting to look in the end, and it's a lot of fun. Join me next time when we go through the detail process and the finishing process of this piece. Should be a lot of fun. Thanks again.